Am I giving you my shoulder right now? My butt. I'm giving. Oh my gosh. I'm giving. Okay. Am I giving you? Deborah, I'm gonna pass it would ass past the shoulder. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I needed that after. Oh wow. After a weekend of news where it was like, you hope you can laugh because otherwise you're gonna cry. That was good, and I apologize for giving you that particular look. Although I feel like there's, and I don't want to, I don't want to belabor, but I feel like this also could be an issue of eyesight because I'm pretty sure Adriana said shoulder. Yeah, no, I'm teasing. It's all good. It's all good. Now I'm blushing. I should also say, speaking of the view, I was when we were kibitzing a little bit and so now welcome online viewers, welcome on the interweb. If you're tuning in after the fact. And hey, I should say today, even for those of you that are live, often like I don't mean to divide my attention, so I do kind of speak to one, speak to the other, but these ones I post to in the hopes that the ones that you on a particular week you're like, I could take or leave that one, or like, whoa, I never, like, that is not my cup of tea, or then there are others that you might want to revisit. For me, this is one that I revisit all the time, and I love sharing this week's practice. So there's that, and I guess what I was going to allude to was that I was in our setup when we were catching up and talking about things. I was saying that one of my great fears as an amateur, I don't know, YouTuber, I guess that is what my students would say, my teen students would say, is the challenges of lighting and setup and sound. And really, I've learned a lot of, we've learned a lot of things over this last year. I've learned a lot about that. And yet I have so much more to learn. And I feel kind of great trepidation on a kind of class by class basis, not about preparation to teach, in fact, but about just have I got things set up right. And the great fear actually has been that my head will be cut off. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm probably I can't see the other screen, the one that's taping me, and I'm probably, from my nose up, it's gone. But in any case, that actually happened a couple of weeks ago. And after, dealing with the emotional blow of imperfection, it actually did feel like, I know, right? It just dawned on me in that moment. It's like, oh my gosh, all this time I've been laboring under a misapprehension. There is error here. Anyway, yeah, I mean, no, I am actually cognizant, certainly of my own shortcomings, perhaps like most of us, too much so. But I've been laboring under an unnecessary or an unwarranted amount of fear that somehow my taping of these sessions would be deficient in some way, and it was. And you know what? The world didn't end. And today, as a case in point, I'm proudly wearing a hat. This is like, to me, I'm trying to think of what would be worse, like maybe smoking a cigarette or something. I can't imagine going to a yoga class and or it just seems so out of context, culturally speaking. And yet, if I'm being honest, well, two things. One, my hair just wasn't cooperating. Like a year of no haircuts, and I was just like, today, it's not happening. Actually, it's probably not all bent down, but it was all like bling this morning. And the other thing is just like, if I'm like presenting as myself, not as, imagined yogi, teacher Michael, but as an actual human being with insecurities and flaws and weirdness, lots of weirdness, then, the truth of the matter is like, this is my resting state. This is where I'm happiest, is with the backwards ball cap on and ready to go. And so there it is. We'll see if I knock it off. Well, you actually can lie. That's a good point. You lie down and boop, it pops up. No, but what we are going to do today, let me take us into that. I may knock it off in the course of just us mobilizing. So the request had come a couple of weeks ago to lead our meditative sessions with just a brief mobilization. And so let's do that today, okay? And we're gonna make that kind of standard practice, like truly like 5 to 10 minutes. Not a lot, but a little goes a long way. And it's kind of like the ball cap. Like, I really want you to be comfortable, right? There's enough suffering in this world without us unnecessarily, ladling more on. And again, I'm not, equating a stiff hip or a bad hair day with the very real and present suffering that's all around us. But hopefully you know what I'm saying there. Okay, so let's get comfortable. Now, I think Adriana, you had mentioned that you might be lying down on a bed. If you are lying or you are sitting, I think that's totally okay. Either way, both for the sit that we're going to be doing today and for this little mobilization. What I would invite you to do, okay, if you're here with us live or if you're doing this after the fact, is just to move your body in ways that make you feel a little bit more space, whether that's space in your joints or just like, a bit of more space for breathing, just like like bringing that, like a feeling of like, and like letting go and just like being okay. Yeah, and see, there it is. I didn't even cue arms up, but that's a wonderful one. We're just gonna spend a few minutes, and in fact, taking you all as my cue, I'm gonna start stretching. And so you can absolutely watch me on camera and kind of follow along with what I'm doing. Ooh, see, I got a bonus crack in my right hip when I was reaching up to the left. How cool is that? But equally, I'd encourage you to do your own thing, okay? Like for me, you can see obviously the side body is where I wanna be today. But each of us, our bodies and our central nervous systems have particular ways of being, right? So what might feel super juicy and delicious for one body might feel icky and unnecessary for another, okay? I should also say, as you're getting things rolling, actually I'm gonna stay with the shoulders for a bit. I'm gonna all kind of in the upper half. This one, and by the way, if you're doing that, the hands on the shoulders, again, like you can take them off if it's uncomfortable, but I really like going one way and the other and making this all about what's happening in the shoulder blades. Feeling them rotate and kind of turn and move out when the elbows come in, and then shoulder blades come in as the elbows go out. Just playing with what's happening. Ooh. Sorry, train of thought gone. Move, breathe, get ready to go. We'll get into our hips. I am gonna come off my block here for a second. No rhyme or reason to any of this other than it feels like the right thing in the moment. I think that this is actually a case where, from my perspective, it's a cool thing about yoga asana, but it's also a bit of a demerit in my mind, is that because most people think about yoga and they think about being told, move your body this way, bend over, sit up, downward dog, upward dog, and following along. I think, which is great, right? Like being led it can feel really nice. You can kind of like, thinking brain can hopefully take a break, or more likely it just starts focusing on something else, like the quality of your practice. But in any case, I think that too, when we focus on yoga being just a series of poses, like, very devoted, like, we miss out on the opportunity to explore what it means to be as a human being, like to be alive in a body, right? And I gotta tell you, like, if that ain't yoga, I don't know what is. So like, just getting comfortable and moving your body in ways that seem intuitive and call out to you. Again, it doesn't necessarily come together as a flow or anything, but it's something. All right. So maybe just finishing up whatever moves you've got going on, or taking as long as you need, okay? I would say, like, in general, like, we're doing this for this class, and we have done it on occasion, but I'll make that kind of more sort of standard. I cannot stress enough that I'm challenged to think of an activity. There's a little bit of homework for everyone. If you can think of an activity that is made better by inviting more stress in, and I don't mean like useful tension, right? But like, the idea of like, I'm gonna really like put some pressure on myself now. I'm gonna really like ramp up the tension. Nah, okay, especially not when we're gonna practice. It's like I was I can't even remember in fact which one this was, but one of the many podcasts I listened to, gentleman was being interviewed, and he was kind of a senior meditator, I guess you might say, an experienced person with a certain degree of wisdom, and he was talking about taking this practice or practices of a meditative quality off of the mat and into your life, into the world. Something, by the way, that I don't think should have a strict like on off or black white dichotomy. It's like there's formal practice, and then there's lots and lots of opportunities for moment by moment practice in the day, and they exist together. Like I don't think that they need to be so thought of as so separate or hierarchically or anything else. In any case, this guy, this speaker, see if I can meander back to my point, was talking about laughing, kind of chuckling about the idea of people throwing their golf clubs, that activity in particular. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's like, you're relaxing, you're paying to, play the super, he didn't say elitist, but like, sport that like costs a lot of money, and you're outside, and it's supposed to be relaxing, and there you are chucking your club into the woods or something. It's how silly, like what a misuse of time. What a perfect expression of the human condition also. And anyway, I think that if his point was that we could overall benefit from less pressure, less tension, less clinging onto our own story or our own ways of seeing things, and just be open to an experience in the moment. It's funny, even as it's coming out of my mouth, it's like, that's not profound, that's simple. Sometimes simple, it feels profound to me. In any case, the longer I practice, the more these kind of very simple, just like short truths seem to speak out. I'm going to share one with you, one like that, a short practice that is simple and hopefully understandable, and useful, okay, in the course of your lives. And I must say, I was pleased on one level to have stumped a senior, a veteran, I should say, meditator. And when I say senior, I mean in terms of breadth of experience in you, Deb. When I mentioned R.A.I.N and you're like, no, not familiar, I was like, oh, kazam! Like, it's just like, excellent, I've got something new to share. Okay, good for you. Yeah, very much so. Oh, you're doing a form of R.A.I.N practice in one of the other groups? Oh, very good. Okay, well, maybe someone could share that with me after class. I would love that. I would love to see. I'm always curious to see different modalities or different takes. And I should say, speaking of that, like Debbie, you're quite right to mention Tara Brock. Bad teacher for a second, in the sense that I'm not going to come up with the name of, and I think that was also a woman, but in any case, I'm not going to come up with the name of the actual originator of the R.A.I.N practice. I have certainly the three big names of people whose work I've read and whose practices I've followed and sat with them remotely, I guess you might say. Tara Brock certainly is the top of that list, as is a wonderful, kind, humane, and smart doctor by the name of Judson Brewer, whose work I adore, and I strongly encourage anyone who, anyway, I can say more about that, but his work is fantastic. Judd Brewer, J-U-D Brewer. And I'll tell you what, I'll share these three that I'm mentioning, these three people, if you're interested in checking them out. So Tara Brock is certainly not the originator, but one of the popularizers. And really, I would say, when I said this is a simple practice that we're going to take on today, she wrote an entire book dedicated just to this practice. And it is, the book, which I read during the pandemic, is phenomenal. I learned tons. I practiced lots too, because it's not just, that's the great thing about books about meditation, is that they invariably come with the sits included. So they're workbooks, not just like read a book and maybe keep some of it, maybe forget it. And so she's made a couple of key innovations to the original practice, one in particular that we're going to focus on today. And the third person, then in fact the first that I became aware of this practice through, is another doctor. His name is Daniel Siegel. He is I'm not sure if I believe he's a neuroscientist as well as a mindfulness-based psychiatrist, I think. I'm getting my degrees mixed up, but in any case, he works a lot in attachment theory and with young people, and so being a teacher of young people, his work and his seminal work, a book by the name of Brainstorm, he talks about the value of R.A.I.N practice. So there's, again, I guess that accomplishes two things. One, to say that I am very much, I was going to say sitting on the shoulders of giants. But the other thing is, you're getting very much today the Michael Alex take on R.A.I.N. Okay, so I certainly don't want to speak to any of the fine work of any of those much more experienced, knowledgeable meditators. There's a lot of people doing work with this form of meditation, I guess is what I'm saying. And please don't take my contribution as the final one to that conversation. This practice continues to grow and evolve. And to me, that's the most exciting thing about anything, really, is that it's not a done deal, that it's constantly up for investigation and, practice. Okay? So if you are watching this after the fact, you might want to think about what I'm going to suggest and actually pause the video and then pick it back up when you're ready to go. Okay? If you're going live and you need some time, that's okay. You can kind of just join us in progress as we get into this. But I sent in the email that I sent out, the reminder email today, I'd mentioned that you might want to have an irritating or annoying or troubling or any example of a situation, whether it's an interpersonal relationship or a social relationship. I know we're not having as many of those these days, but or just something that's worrying you, that's stressing you out. Like, kind of R.A.I.N is from at least the way I practice, it's a bit of a one-stop shop of equal parts acceptance and relaxation, but also investigation. It's a lot. I would actually say that we're going to go through this as an acronym. So the R, A, I, and N each stand for a different aspect of the practice. And I think what we'll do is I'll spend about a minute setting each up, and then you can sit with it for kind of 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'll insert the next. And I should say this is meant to be a self-contained practice, but certainly if you had I rarely treat the kind of issue that I would bring to a practice like R.A.I.N as a one and done. I'm never sitting down just like, oh, I think I'll sit R.A.I.N today. Like, there's always an intention. Like, I'm very, there is an element of like having a bit of a purpose, which can actually get in the way of kind of a meditative intent. Like, we don't want to be trying too hard. I'll give you a few specific cues about how, maybe to avoid some pitfalls that at least I've fallen into over time and learned from. But R.A.I.N is a practice of, I would say, self-acceptance, fundamentally. It is also an inquiry-based practice. And depending on how your particular brain works, you might find yourself visualizing, okay, like actually bringing up the picture of the person you're thinking about in a way that we would do, say, in a loving kindness meditation. But I would distinguish, and not to parse it too much, but R.A.I.N is less loving kindness and more self-compassion, okay? So if you've got that kind of troubling thing that, like for me, I don't mind sharing what I'm going to sit with today because, for me, it was the government's announcements around the lockdown, which I don't want to turn the meditation into a political debate. That's not neither the time nor the place. But I was alarmed for a number of reasons, and I often say like hurt my heart to refer to like my dogs or someone I really care about, like, oh, you hurt my heart. It felt differently this week. And it was like the flip side of that. It was like, I was so full of worry for so many people. And so that's what I'm going to be sitting with today is just like how I'm relating to that. Okay. Which really at the end of the day, I'd just encourage you to try to approach what we're going to do from a less analytical and a more heart-centered way of being. Okay, so I'm going to cue you into the somatic experience as opposed to just thinking with your noodle. Okay, any questions before we roll? Good. Got your thing. So not, Category 5 hurricane, more like small tropical storm in terms of intensity. Okay. Take this first moment or two. Hopefully we're all mobilized and feeling comfortable. Lay back, or sit up, but allow yourself to come into a state of comfort. I'm going to lose my glasses because that's more comfortable. Okay. Take a few breaths, not manipulating them, just in the same way that we let our bodies find their own place in their own space. Just becoming aware of the regular pattern of your breathing. Maybe getting curious about your breath, not trying to affect it, but just noticing it. I mean, it's a bit of a barometer, right, for what's going on internally. I think it's just fine to give it a little nudge. So if you're feeling, like it's catching or it's tight or it's small, we're going to try to let it be what it's going to be, but, get broader, get deeper, get calmer. And I think it's useful to have a home base or a resting point for this meditation because we're going to be dealing very much with thoughts and feelings. And bodily sensations, but if it at any point becomes overwhelming or you become distracted, maybe have a place that you can go back to and then you can resume the meditation when it seems right. This is a practice where sometimes it doesn't even look like a meditation when I'm doing it, in the sense that I will have my journal close by, and if something particularly big pops up, I actually will come out of the sit and just jot a note or two. Don't have to worry about that for right now. Like I say, most of these sits benefit from repeated viewings, repeated practice. Okay, so let's call up that maybe challenging, whatever. Let's just go with challenging, okay? It may have produced a particular, in fact, if it is challenging, it's likely produced a couple of things. A whole lot of thinking, and perhaps one or more feelings, and the feelings themselves may have added to the challenge, the proverbial second arrow of suffering. Feeling bad and then feeling bad about feeling bad. Okay. Good, so we've got this. So if you are an auditory person and you want to kind of play it back for yourself, you can do that. If you're visual, you can visualize it. But above all else, as we go through this process, I'm going to encourage you to come back to the felt sense of what is going on in your body. Let's start there. That's the R in our R.A.I.N practice. We're going to recognize what is going on. This is very much the mindfulness piece, as they say. So recognize. You might ask yourself, what is happening? Let me drill down a little bit on that for you before I leave you in silence, to just recognize what's happening. And just that, okay? Not judge, not investigate, not do anything else, but notice. So we're being mindful of the thing we're being mindful of, okay, with that challenging person or whatever it is. But we're also bringing online our focus on our bodies. If you feel tension, if you feel kind of the tides of emotional turbulence, as you recognize what's going on in your mind, recognize how that plays out in your body. So we're just allowing ourselves to become more and more aware. So as you hold that, like I say, that challenge, and you come back from distractions when you get distracted, okay, it's kind of a natural thing to drop into a story about this, okay, not beating up on ourselves, just calming back and recognizing where we're feeling it in our breath and in our body. There's a second R I'll leave you with here. So we're recognizing, but we're also relaxing into this. Allow your body to relax, even if it's a little, the stuff that you're holding on to can feel tough. It can feel tough and you're still relaxing about yourself. Just stay with that for a few minutes and then we'll pick it up from there. If you feel yourself tightening up at all, physically against the thoughts or against the feelings, just breathe in a little space, breathe in a little calm. Just recognizing it, just seeing what's happening, what's under the hood. Okay, good. Now, we're going to move on to the A. That doesn't preclude, we'll think of this as like a concurrent flow, like we're adding the A to the R, and the R is still happening. So still staying mindful of your situation, okay, what you're focused on, and still recognizing what's happening in your body, how this is playing out as you're reflecting in this way, as you're being. This is simply a way of being aware. And unlike where often we move through our lives and we might be kind of buffeted around by what life throws at us and maybe not even notice, what's happening right now, what's happening, and then it all just kind of sneaks up on you. Boom. So we recognize, and then importantly, the A in R.A.I.N is to allow. Allow the feelings that whatever this person or this experience or this challenge brings up to be what they are. Don't fight them. Try to resist pushing them away. The meditative, I guess tourism isn't the right word, but the idea here, often it's observed that what we resist persists. So this is simply the converse. We're allowing that this thing that is challenging, that is bothering us, is. We recognize it, we're allowing it. Okay. Doesn't mean that you have to accept it on a personal level, or that you have to say, well, that's the way it's always going to be. But for right now, this is where you are. So allowing. And the other A that I would drop in here is just check your own attitude. Like often, the fight, flight, freeze response plays out even in terms of this internal landscape. Notice your own tendency to want to jump into labeling and judging, or perhaps fixing, a personal favorite there. Notice how you're relating to what's going on. Are you being hard on yourself? Are you being hard on others? Are you perhaps missing the common humanity that we share? So just recognizing now, allowing to be. If there was a somatic sensation that I could drop in to describe this feeling of allowing, it is one of openness. Okay, a little bit less time on the allow, although again, if allowing feels challenging, or letting things be, recognizing this is what's happening, not trying to affect the outcome, at least for now, just seeing it, seeing how it plays out in your body, feeling the emotions that come up, allowing things to be as they are. That can be a lot. That's a whole practice right there, right? So I don't mean to, push you faster than you want to go. You can stay right there. I find the next stop in our R.A.I.N journey, the I, to be one that can be quite deep and quite profound, because it too is about knowing. The I stands for investigate. It's about generating interest or curiosity. But here's the real key. The real jam of this meditation is that we're not trying to analytically sort out what is going on, what is my role, how do I fix this, what is her deal, or what, any of that stuff. It's about accessing, again, to my way of thinking, there's this kind of almost mystical quality to this resting awareness that in our busy lives we often only get the odd glimpse of. But it's there, it's operating in the background all the time. Some might say this is the wisdom of the body, or the power of all of the processes in our nervous system and our subconscious that are keeping us alive moment to moment. The stuff that we're not aware of, we're not even conscious of unless we draw attention. And that's assuming we can see them. So we're really dropping into an asking without demanding an answer. Allowing whatever may or may not present itself today to just happen. But being curious. And if you find that you're kind of dumping into judging mind, thinking mind, maybe use a little note. You just say feeling or thinking, or the label is of a non kind of judgmental basis, just describing what's happening, what's really, when you drill down here, what is going on. finally, the N in R.A.I.N. Traditionally, or in the first iteration of this practice, N signified non-identification. I am not this thought or this feeling, that these are, and that's true, right? Like, I mean, objectively, I think you probably, or subjectively, you can experience that. Like, follow a thought. You didn't ask for it. It pops up out of the ether, out of nowhere. It stays for a while. And then you get distracted or you move on to something else and the thought's gone. And you're still there. You are still there. Same with feelings. They can ramp up. They can intensify. They might be intermittent. They might be absent. But again, not you, right? And this problem isn't you or even necessarily yours, the focus of whatever it is you're raining on, raining about. So non-identification, valuable. Just again, there's another example of space. It's like a space between, your sense of self and whatever it's bringing up. Okay. Now, Tara Brach's kind of more recent spin on this, and I must say, love it, so necessary, is so personally valuable in my own practice, is to turn the N into nurture. To perform intentional kindness to oneself, particularly when we're dealing with things that are tough. When we come into conflict or we're dealing with adversity, really anytime we're under significant strain and pressure, it's entirely possible that we haven't been our best selves. We've spoken sharply or unkindly. We perhaps haven't appreciated other people's perspectives as fully as they might be fair. I guess in short, I'm just speaking for myself. Sometimes I reflect on a larger problem, and then what becomes difficult to stay with, to allow, is, let alone to investigate, is, my own, I want to say culpability, but there's a judgment in there. My own presence, my own shared space. So, part of that, whatever it is that's gone on. And that's why nurturing is good. That's why some self-care, some self-compassion is the order of the day. The order of every day, really. So however, I'm going to offer the one that it is my go-to, because it's one that we can do right here. Every person would have a particular place. It might be your throat, it might be your heart, it might be, whatever. It could be your left elbow, it could be anything. For me, it is my sternum. Okay, and I just like to just literally give it a tap. It feels really calming, really relaxing. That's one thing that in the course of my day, because I've assigned it the value of nurture and because it feels nice, it kind of now has that effect. I was even yesterday, I was out for a run and I was really struggling physically and mentally. And the hand came up. It's like, it's all good, buddy. You got this. So showing yourself a bit of love here before we put this down. And knowing that, especially when we're dealing with, the issues that can be challenging, the stuff we may or may not want to look at or deal with, that nurturing doesn't stop on the mat. I mean, for me, it's doing nice things for myself and for others in the rest of my day, or it's actually, if I'm really feeling stirred up, it's engaging in restorative practices. And those could be anything for you. That might be, whatever it is that you do to visit kindnesses upon yourself. So we've recognized what is in this situation and what is in our bodies, in our hearts, and in our minds. And hopefully, with a little luck, a little bit of relaxation has crept in, maybe even surreptitiously. while we were allowing the feelings, the thoughts, the sensations to be there. We tapped into the I, being mindful in a way of not knowing, of curiosity, investigating what is happening. And then not identifying, the N of nurture, bringing it all back in. Because life is tough. It's wonderful, but it's challenging. And we need all the support we can get. And if that can start right at home, right here, right behind that sternum, then I think that's so much the better. Okay, let's put aside whatever you were holding on to and come on back in. TD ta-da, there's a R.A.I.N, or like I say, that's today's version of a R.A.I.N meditation. It's funny that it's been this long that we've been practicing together, and I've never shared, I practiced this, of all the kind of self-compassion meditations and techniques, I should say that to our group, the R.A.I.N practice is my go-to. It really is, for me anyway, it is a practice that just keeps on giving. So, yeah. Any questions? Any? There was a lot there too. So anything that maybe I threw out that has left you wanting, or observations you made. Again, you notice that I didn't share where I ended up with the particular thing I was holding on to, that I was holding in my attention, because I really was doing that as we went through the stages. But yeah, just anything at all that anyone wants to share or ask or. And you don't have to either. That's the thing. Sometimes it's just like, nope, that was a practice and that's it. You know, or it's like, I've still got some stuff to chew on and I'm going to come back to it later. So. Great. That is such a wonderful question. Okay, so the question was, I'm just repeating this so that it's on the tape version 2. So tell me if I've stepped on any of this. Is the point of the R.A.I.N practice to change your way of thinking in order to arrive at maybe a healthier or wiser solution? Is that? Yeah? And like to think better about it, is that kind of what you're getting at, Deb, in particular? Yeah. So I would say to that, no. I guess what I would say is not that won't happen. I guess what I would say is, and the 22-year-old graduate student version of me would be shaking his head in disbelief at this level of I don't know, trusting and not necessarily having evidence for it. But what I would say, Deb, is that it definitely for me is not about changing the way I'm thinking at all. In fact, I really try to go through the R.A.I.N and I'm constantly on the lookout for efforts to get into fixing mode. That's kind of a place I like to go. So I'm not trying to sort of even solve the problem. I'm not trying to change the way I feel or think about it. I'm really just being with it. It's like problem, instead of it being like problem or problem, I'm out of here, or problem, and I don't know what to do with it. It's more like problem. And then noticing how that problem and holding that problem or that challenge in my awareness manifests in my body. And then I guess what I would say is, this is what I was alluding to, the more skeptical younger version of me, is that in my experience, when I've tried to think my way out of problems, I haven't actually had a lot of success with that. I come up with good strategies. I definitely can weigh evidence, but I have found that the R.A.I.N practice brings me mindfully back into my body, so that I'm not just a head on a stick, so that I'm really feeling the impact of what's going on and with the nurturing stuff, just kind of being with it. And I guess I don't know how well I'm articulating this, but the reality is that often answers do present themselves. Almost never on like first blush, but I might sit with something that's bothering me intermittently, like a couple of times a week for a month or two, and then one day in the middle of the sit, something will just kind of float up out of the ether, and it's not so much an answer as that my way of relating to what's going on has shifted. I'm not as caught up in it, or sometimes it's an actual solution presents itself. I'm like, Kai caramba, why didn't you think about, you could have just, done this or that. So does that mm-hmm. 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 I think that if that would be the great title for a book on meditation. Meditation, a way of being with things and being able to accept them a little bit for how they're. Yeah, I mean, that sounds all right to me. It also isn't. I mean, I also don't. I'm certainly cognizant of the idea of someone saying, "But this is a big problem," or someone is suffering in a present way. I'm not saying just like I'll have to send you someone I follow online on social media. Actually, another yogi posted a bunch of New Yorker cartoons that were done up with kind of like cheesy yoga meditation aphorisms around, be the breath and stuff. And it's like people falling off of cliffs or like being attacked by dogs in the style of New Yorker cartoons. It's actually charming, really. But the point being that I'm, like those I think the point I took away from those cartoons, and that point I would make to yours is, I'm certainly not suggesting that we don't try to reason out our problems. Like logic in our thinking brain is wonderful. It's important, right? But it's only one tool that we have in our mental toolkit. And I think that by tapping into those other kind of gentler parts, harder to access parts, that there's some goodness there. Yeah. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. um, Mm. Mm-hmm. Well, and hey, there's some wisdom there, right? Because oh my gosh, do I feel you there? Like in the sense that you too, Kath, like yeah, this real willingness to like, yeah, like you said, like a battle cry, like something that in fact was, with the news I was alluding to in my own set, was in fact, I haven't been really reading the political news the last few weeks, by the way. Wonderful mental health improvement as a result. And actually, maybe you know what? Rather than me talk about the sit from this weekend, maybe I can speak to your question or your observation a little bit there specifically, Deborah. And by the way, what you described that you had done sounds like bang on. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong. It's just like we're gonna all do what we do, and you practice and you learn, right? Yeah, it's just like it's another experiment over and over again. That being said, the way you described it, that is exactly what my intention was in terms of leading, what your experience was. It's the news, though. I'll give you that as an example. News is something that I have consumed avidly for hours a day since I was 12. So a while, and I enjoy it immensely. And because I just love learning. And but I've got a perhaps not so helpful habit of reading stuff that I know revs me up. I'm not learning. Like increasingly, I'm asking myself, are you just feeling all the feels, like feeling indignant or judging or getting ramped up about this or that, or looking for validation, like confirmation bias is a thing, all of that, or Or are you like, is this actually a productive exercise? And the reason that a few weeks ago I stopped reading about party politics is I recognized it wasn't making me feel very good physically as well as mentally. I wasn't learning anything, and it was basically just making my life worse. And the truth of it is, if you put it on paper, everything I've been brought up and taught is that being an informed person and learning about things makes you capable and even powerful. Like it cuts to the heart of everything I was taught about who I should be. No joke. And yet I've changed my approach to that simply, honestly, because of the R.A.I.N practice. Because I had a news article a few weeks ago. It was written by an epidemiologist. It was about high school teachers. And it wasn't even about, it was an American. And they were actually kind of pro-teacher, but they ventured a point of view that got me. Just like, it was like knives, like all over us, like, ugh, and really upset. And there was just this moment of clarity where I was like, what is going on, dude? You're just reading a paper, like a article about what someone thinks in the southern US. Like, why are you so upset? So I actually stopped and did a R.A.I.N practice kind of concurrently or just after I read the article. And that was the takeaway. So yeah, so what you're describing, that's one way it's worked for me. I don't think that's going to change, and I don't love it, but I'm gonna be a little bit more deliberate about how I expend my own attention and energy, So like I said to the group, I spent last night, instead of, reading about what our own government was doing, I learned an awful lot about mRNA, and I'm better for it. Anyway, yeah. Anyone else? I don't mean to rattle on as I'm inclined to do. Oh, okay. Well, we'll leave it there. Actually, hold on. I'm just gonna buy everyone online, and you're gonna get the shoulder view here. Hold on a second. Okay.